Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in 1 Corinthians. The last few days we've been talking about the issue of meat that was sacrificed to idols. Is it permissible to eat that meat? And we've seen that according to the Apostle Paul, that is a disputable matter. Some believers have decided it's okay to eat the steak. Others have decided it's not. Now, fortunately for us, Paul gives us some very practical advice on how this works out in our lives, or at least the lives of the Corinthians. So let's look at the practical advice Paul gives to them. It's in chapter 10, verses 25 and following. He says, "Now eat anything that is sold in the meat market without raising objections. For the earth is the Lord's, and everything in it." So first Paul says, when you go to the market and you buy yourself a steak for supper, now you know that idols don't exist, so meat's okay. So just don't ask any questions. There's no point in asking whether that steak was offered to an idol or not. Just buy it and go home and eat it. So just if nobody raises the issue, just simply buy your steak, go home and eat it. Then he gives another scenario, verse 27. "Now, if an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, well, eat whatever is put before you without raising questions of conscience. But if someone says to you, 'This has been offered in sacrifice,' then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience." I'm referring to the other person's conscience, not yours. For why is my freedom being judged by another's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thanksgiving, why am I denounced because of something I can thank God for? So in this scenario, Paul says, let's say an unbeliever invites you to his home for a meal. He sets the food before you. Eat it. Don't raise questions about it. Don't ask where it came from. Just simply enjoy the food, giving thanks to God. But if perhaps someone raises the issue without your asking and says, this steak was offered in the temple of Zeus earlier today. Now, if they raise that question, then perhaps you had better refrain from eating. Not because there's anything wrong with the steak, but because since they've raised the question, it's in their mind, and they might misunderstand, and they might think if you eat the steak, you are okay with idolatry, which of course you are not. So for the sake of conscience, not yours but theirs, don't eat in that situation. Just in these two scenarios, Paul says eat in one situation but not in another, depending on people around you and the questions they've raised and the issues that are before them. Then he goes on to say, "So whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews or Greeks or the church of God, even as I try to please everyone in every way. For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." In other words, whatever you do, make sure you're doing it for the glory of God. You're free to live and do whatever is before you as long as you can do it for the glory of God. But also, don't cause someone else to stumble. If someone else has a weaker faith or a weaker knowledge and it's an issue for them, you might voluntarily give up some of your rights by eating that steak so as to help them and not to cause them to stumble. For one of the ways you glorify God is by trying to help everyone grow in their faith in Jesus and in their life in Him. It's all about living for the glory of God. And this is especially true with those disputable matters. Always do what you do for God's glory. And part of the way you glorify God is by watching out for others and not doing anything that might cause them to stumble. So live for God, live fully for Jesus, live for the glory of God. Paul says, that's what I do. And this is the example I've set for you, and I would hope that you would do the same thing as well. Hope you'll join us tomorrow as we continue our 5-minute Bible study in the book of 1 Corinthians.